Okay. Good afternoon to all of you. I understand that most probably the day has been long for most of you around the COP. So thank you for being here. Today we would like to continue on the path of reflection that we have initiated with SIAM and the Union for the Mediterranean in this pavilion on the resilience and inclusiveness of agri-food systems in the Mediterranean. I don't know if some of you had the occasions to attend the previous side events that we had, but on this path now what we intend is to focus on a specific agricultural production system that is linked to a very important economic sector that is vine and wine. So to have an in-depth view and discussion on this important issue, you know this symbolic of the vine and wine in the region. Now it's part of the trilogy that we have with the olives and the olive oil, with the wheat and the bread, and the third part is the vine and the wine. So to reflecting on this issue, we have with us some very good colleagues and friends. We have Alicia Perez Porro, who is the scientific coordinator of CREAF. We have Pau Roca, who is the General Director of the International Office on Vine and Wine. And we have Raúl Compés, who is the Director of the Center of SIAM in Zaragoza, which has a long tradition of educational programs and support to research in this area of sustainability of agro-food systems and study of the importance of the economic sectors that are linked to them. I will not go in depth into the profile of the colleagues that will intervene, neither of the institutions, because you will have the occasion of interacting with them. So you will be discussing with Alicia, with Raúl, with Pau, and they will tell you who they are, what is their profile, what is the concentration areas of their institution. I can tell you they have significant institution into the Mediterranean region. So I want to stop here on my part. Sorry, I haven't introduced myself. I'm Plácido Plaza, and I'm the Secretary General of SIAM. And now I'm going to give the floor to Raúl, who is going to handle and animate this debate. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Plácido. Good afternoon. Welcome to this session organized by the Spanish Institute of the SIAM, located in Zaragoza, and devoted to, in general, Mediterranean crops and climate change. But we couldn't treat all the Mediterranean crops, so we have selected one crop that we know, I think, very well. And for us, it is a very good example about how climate change is affecting Mediterranean crops and how the sector, the industry, is facing this challenge. Because for us, I don't know, maybe Pau will underline this point, is leading in some way in the response to the issues of mitigation and mainly adaptation. So, as you know, Mediterranean region is one of the most affected around the world, and Mediterranean crops traditionally has been adapted to a specific situation, relatively short rainfall, concentrated in some moments of the year, hot summers, etc. So during centuries and even thousands of years, we are talking about Mediterranean crops thinking in a particular zone in the planet. But now climate change is challenging very hardly the capacity of this sector to adapt to these new situations. Well, the vine, the plant, is very sensitive to climatological factors such as temperature, rainfall, and light. And therefore, the physiology and metabolic process. So it is a plant very vulnerable to climate change. And climate plays the most crucial role as it is the most difficult fact to control in wine growing, hence the wealth and diversity of grapes and wines worldwide. That if you like, wine is one of the best things of the wine. The big amount, but the big diversity around the world of the wines. And this is, in some way, this variety, this plurality of wines is affected, it is originated by the water in some region. So climate change affects yields, the organoleptic composition of the grapes, sugar, acids, aromas, etc., and therefore the quality and typicity characteristic of the wine. If you are lovers of wine, it is sure that you have heard about the terroir. The concept terroir represents this connection of the product of the wine with not only the land, but the water, and two, of course, the human factor, how humans have been able to change, to adapt the vegetal material, the way to cultivate during the time. So if the water change is very likely the typicity and even the terroir could change. So this is a big challenge. Well, we know that vine is a very resistant plant, and wine can be produced in many places. But we know too that the good wines can be produced only in some very specific conditions. You can plant a vineyard, and maybe the grapes are correct, but it is not very easy to do a very good wine and a rentable activity if the quality of the grape are not good enough. So in fact, grape vines are grown in every continent. I think there are 73 countries where we can find vineyards and grape and wine production, but not in all climates or in all regions. The vine and wine geography across the world is very much associated and concentrated in a given latitude between 30 and 50 degrees north and south, and to the Mediterranean climate. So, to analyze how this crop and the wine industry is in general in all the world of the wine facing this challenge, we have with us, as Plácido mentioned, the General Director of the OIV, and the International Organization of Vine and Wine. And I have prepared some questions in our way of dialogue to know more how climate change is going to is affecting, in fact, to wine, grape and wine production, how the sector is reacting, is facing what kind of solutions technological in the field or even in the wine activity production, and what is the role of institutions of the OIV, and some cases of good practices in some regions about facing this important challenge. So, but adaptation is not only a question of production, because we have to take into account too the capacity of Mediterranean ecosystems to produce and to deliver ecological services. So the optimal output would be to be able to combine and to find an equilibrium between the production and the ecological maintenance of ecological values. So to talk about the capacity of ecological Mediterranean ecosystems to maintain at the same time the productive capacity and the deliver for citizens of environmental services, we have with us Alicia Perez Porro. She's too an expert in scientific diplomacy, and she's a person that I think, Alicia, knows how to create alliances, a partnership, in order to make possible this response to the challenges, because a lot of them are reacted to or in relation with technological challenges. So, if you want, we are going to start with Pau. Pau, the first part of my question is related to the impact, the geographical impact of climate change, how this is going to influence in the different wine territories. If you consider that there are some losers, and at least in the short term, if not winners, territories that due to increase in temperatures can gain in quality of wines and so on. What is your vision about how the wine geography is going to change, taking into account the worst scenario? Because when we consult the literature, we can see that in the worst scenario, the wine geography worldwide could change very much, and some of the more traditional regions could suffer important reduction of production, but not only in quantity, too in quality and typicity. What is your opinion about that?
Okay, thank you, Raúl, and thank you, Plácido, for your introduction, and I want also to thank Siam and the hosting Mediterranean Pavilion. So thank you for having invited me. This is the first thing. And then second, I am going to answer to your question. Climate has been very important. It is very important to determine the zonifications of the different regions of wine. That regions of wine are a part of the branding of wine. So this is very important. You're right. Climate is part of it. Soil is part of it. Also, the plant material is part of it. So the genetics or the varieties of the different grapes are. So this is a multivariable. You have to play with these three variables, and play. It's also another variable, human factor. So the human factor and the knowledge and the science and the innovation, it's also part of it. So it is true that climate plays a role. We have to separate climate from meteorological events. This is something that we are really suffering. This is something that hazel, that drought, fires, everything. I mean, this is also part of climate change, but then we have to look at the general tendency. And these zonifications, and I was talking to Vincent right before, till almost 1970, was almost like the Romans had decided the Rhine was the limit in the north of where wine could be planted. Okay, and for Europe, this was very important because Europe has a system. The European Union has a system of zonification, and together with this system, you have also planting rights. Okay, so everything outside of this area was not possible to think about planting outside there. Now the truth is that you have almost excellent wines in the south of London, in Britain, and then you can also have wines, sparkling wines, maybe in the area of Sweden. But there is no option. I would say that delocalization is not an option. And this is because the patrimoine, the legacy of the different appellations of origin is so important. The capital tied to that branding, that the indications of origin is so important that we have to play with other factors. And those other factors are plant material, as I was saying, and also what we have 8,000 varieties, so there we have a big capacity of adaptation. And well, I let you go on your questions if you want. I think
So you don't fear great changes in geography of wine geography.
thank you.
Maybe even if the wine growing continues being concentrated in Mediterranean areas, what kind of best places to cultivate grape? How this could change the value of the land of
I
the
think there
soils.
are opportunities beyond the limits, but the main planting areas will remain because adaptation will play a role and human factor will be very important. Research is going to give solutions. We have a very resilient sector, and that would the non-delocalization will be the main objective.
Okay, let's now talk about solutions, okay? Because I think there is big literature about technical solutions. We are not going to talk now about enology. We are going to talk about grape production, okay, in the fields. So the literature says that if the climate change is relatively moderated, changing the method of production, okay, could be enough. But if really is worse than expected, or the increase of the temperatures as higher, in the worst scenario, maybe the farmers, the wine growers should change the vineyards. I mean with maybe with new plant material, and this is very costly. New varieties, and you know that the varieties are very associated with some terroir, etc. What is your perspective about the necessity in changes in cropping methods, and in maybe the changes in vineyard, plantation, plants, etc. And what kind of new technology that maybe now we don't know should be produced in order to respond to these needs?
Okay. We have many capacities to and a lot of experience. We said this large diversity of varieties. Okay, this is something in which we can take many possibilities. You have to renew normally every 40 years your way to plant, or the way to conduct the vineyard is very important. The way you have the canopy, the way you prune is very important. It changes from region to region. Maybe going back to the goblet way of pruning that needs less water, it's also one way. You have to look at Santorini does. It's a very almost desertic place. So you have the canopy, and the vines are just right on the earth on a few millimeters, no? This is also something that you have to look at other ways of pruning. And of course, also all the elements that you have to look at, different smart ways of producing with new technology, with a lot of information, and maybe I'm going to be more expressive on that.
But Pau, if you should choose one or two priority lines of research, imagine you have the capacity to design the kind of new research, new technology, new innovation that it is needed for you. Which are the main priorities in order to adapt better the vineyards? The main lines to invest more, to know better how to face the challenge. The agenda of research and
Yes.
innovation.
Water management. This is very important. Physiology of the vineyard together with the varieties. So knowing each variety and all the physiology of the all the bioclimatic research that needs to be done. I think there is a lot to be done there in order to say anticipate what's going to happen.
And one third group of questions, Pau, it's related to the role of the OIV. The OIV is the main international organization. It's a technical and scientific organization recommended to countries how to manage some critical aspects. What the OIV that you direct at that moment is doing for easing countries and industry to adapt. Could you tell us some good examples of adaptation that can be a model or a good reference for the rest of the wine world? What can you tell us about that?
Okay, OIV is mainly, like many other intergovernmental organizations, giving guidance to the sector and to policymakers in order to make, wine policy or. But at the same time, we can provide for some services, no? And this is the main capacity that we can provide for the different grape growers and for the different regions. I think it is very important to look at a specific example of cooperation between Portugal, Spain, and Italy on a project precisely called MedGold, which is the Mediterranean comes from Mediterranean, and G comes from grapes. All is olive oil, and D is Triticum durum. So MedGold it's an experience that has been put on, and I'm going to take here almost like to make a commercial. This is an example of cooperation in which you have a pilot that produces a dashboard to the service of viticultures and to the regions or to appellations of origin or different policymakers as well. And this is it has different scenarios of data. It takes all data because what happens is that we have a lot of data. There is a lot of meteorological data. We have, the satellite Copernicus. We have drones. We have all sorts of data captors. We have a lot of capturing data, no? But the agriculture doesn't know how to. The producer doesn't know how to manage all this. You need to put artificial intelligence. Okay, so this is very important. If you have a lot of data but you cannot digest it, you have nothing. You just have noise. And at this moment, I think this type of cooperation brings some type of results in anticipating. You can have three scenarios. One, it's seasonal decisions. You can decide with all this data what is your treatments. You can minimize. The use of some products in the vineyard because you can be more precise in terms of humidity, in terms of heat at a certain moment. So you can anticipate mildew, for example. But you can also have a longer-term scenario in order to plant in another way. You change your plantation site, or so. This is an example of good cooperation that we are going to provide to the members, to the different governments, and also to the at the end to give a service to the producers.
Thank you. Last question for me.
It's like implementing together. Okay.
Last question. Are you optimistic about the capacity of wine sector to adapt? What do you think about the consumer? Because maybe in some regions the wines are going to change. Maybe the varieties, the flavor. What do you think about the capacity of consumer to accept the new kind of wines result of the changes due to the climate change? What is your perspective about
Wines
that?
have been changing. If we were tasting the wines from the Romans, we would be very disgusted now. But it's true that we have different regions, and those wines will evolve. They will increase in quality in all cases, because the human being trends to innovate and trends to improve things. Why I am optimistic is because the wine sector has never been on denial. It has been very conscious of the situation of climate change, and for many years, this is something that they have been registering, temperatures being registered, the crops. This is something you take a decision on the date of the crop, and this has been advanced progressively in the last 30 years or 40 years. So we have a historic record, and nobody can deny this, and so we are in the second generation of alerting of climate change in vines. So this conscious awareness brings us a lot of resilience. Also, the structure of the sector is very resilient, because we have I would say, like an economic biodiversity. We're very fragmented. Multinationals they are not very interested in the wine business, because you have to invest on many sides, and the return is long term, very long term. So it's family-driven business, and so this makes a lot of resilience to the sector. And so I am very optimistic, because we will have responses. We are having responses, and at the same time, I think we are a precursor for other sectors. So I'm not saying that we are going to be the paradigm of the result of agriculture, but I think we are ahead of many other sectors in terms of being aware and being responsive.
Well, thank you very much, Pau. Now we are going to talk with Alicia. Alicia she's an expert in scientific diplomacy, and she's working in an institute, in a center specialized in ecology. So my first question, Alicia, would be how scientific diplomacy and ecology could help to any Mediterranean crop. We are talking about wine, but maybe olive oil or nuts or other. How diplomacy and scientific and ecology could help? What kind of collaboration could be created in order to facilitate or to ease these processes of adaptation?
Thank you, Raul. Hello, everyone. So I think that you said it at the beginning, right? When you introduced me, you said that I am really good at alliances, and I think that this is exactly what we are looking for. We need a collaborative science with a multi-stakeholder approach to be able to involve all the actors, and that's what science diplomacy is as well, to be able to tackle all of these challenges, not only for the wineries but for every other industry. And I think that for the wineries, what Pau was saying is very true. It's an industry that is ahead of the curve, because all the things that he was describing, there's a lot of science in wine. There's a crazy amount of science in wine, and it has been for centuries. So, and I think that the relationship between wine and science is very clear. Like Pau was saying, that the day that you pick for harvesting is key, and it not only is key, that it's now happening an average of 15 days earlier than 50 years ago. And we know that because of science. So I think that the science that we need now to be able to continue having wine needs to go towards adaptation. You mentioned, Pau, 3 things that I wrote down: water management, physiology, and bioclimatic processes. I think that water management is very much a big topic. Especially, we need to talk about to improve the capacity of wine salts to retain water, not only how to manage it. So I think that this type of collaborations between the private sector in this case and science, coming in my case from a public institution, because a lot of private companies have a research department in their companies, but I think that having also the collaboration with the public sector, with the academic sector is key, and this type of collaboration should be incentivized so we can contribute to one another, because in this case, and to put it in a way that is very simple, you have the money and we have the knowledge. So we really need one another. This is a win-win situation.
No, Alicia, we have seen that Pau is optimistic about the future, about the capacity of the wine sector to adapt to the climate change, because in the past has been able to do it, because there are a lot of technology, a lot of changes that can be done in the fields, in the vineyards, in the wine. Are you optimistic about the capacity of Mediterranean ecosystems? Because they are vulnerable too. But are you optimistic about their capacity to maintain at the same time the capacity to produce, the capacity of offering, delivering to the society these ecosystem services? Or do you think that in some specific cases, you have mentioned to water, can be conflicts about the capacity of one resources to deliver at the same time the needs of productive sectors and the needs of society in terms of ecology, or not?
So water is going to be a big challenge in the Mediterranean. MEDEC, the scientific report that is one of the products of UFM, now that we are in the Mediterranean pavilion, MEDEC says that by mid-century, the rain is going to decrease 17% in the Mediterranean region. That's a lot. So water is going to be a big change. But the thing that makes me optimistic is that we do know what to do. What is now not failing, but where we are missing is implementation. We are now, right now, they are calling COP27 the implementation COP. And this is what is missing right now. We really know what to do. We really know the solutions. We have the knowledge. We have the science. We have the people. We are trying to have the financement. And what we need is the implementation. And I think that this is where the focus should be in the next couple of years in implementation. And I also want to say that you were mentioning ecosystem services, and I do think that that's a very interesting thing to highlight, because when we think about growing grapes, we think about wine, we think about productivity, we think about drinking the wine, and we are not thinking about that those wineries are also capturing CO2 from the atmosphere. And that's also very important, because they do have a role in mitigation. And depending on how to cultivate the grapes, you are going to be capturing more CO2. So in CREAF, one of the lines of research is about regenerative agriculture, which is very much that. How to change the way that we are growing, in this case grapes, to maximize the amount of CO2 that we can capture in the soil from the atmosphere. And it is very interesting, because if you change that, you also use less fertilizers, and you use less energy consumption, and you improve the capacity of retaining water in the soil. So having this perspective of it's not only producing wine, it's also a service for the world, I think that it's a very important perspective that I know that some private companies like Familia Torres, because they collaborate with CREAF, they do have that perspective of like, we are also capturing CO2, and that's important.
Alicia, you have mentioned that we know what we should do. We have the knowledge, we have maybe the technology, but the big challenge is implementation. But at the same time, you advise governments, regional or public governments, and maybe you have a direct experience about the reaction of policymakers about your recommendations. Sometimes we as citizens, we have the impression that there are other interests more important than scientific recommendations in order to follow these principles to design policies. What is the key element to break these conflicts of interest, the public interest coming through the science and other interests that change sometimes the decision of the government, and how to overcome this conflict? Because if not, we can continue speaking about this during years. We know what to do, but we can't do it. Why?
We had a very interesting panel actually here in the Mediterranean Pavilion a couple of days ago about science diplomacy. And we were specifically talking about that, about the challenge that it is that governments and scientists talk to have science-informed solutions, science-informed policies, and one of the challenges is that we speak different languages, completely different languages, and we are not willing to talk to each other because it's difficult to leave your comfort zone. And also we detected that we need more hybrid profiles. That's how we call them. So we need people from the science world that is able to speak the policy language, and we need people from the policy side or the diplomatic side that is willing to learn a little bit about the science. And we need, so if we have, here is research and here is policy, diplomacy, there's like a gap between the two places. And we need people coming from here, meeting people coming from here, and kind of like populating the space that is in the middle. I grew up scientifically in the US, where I spent 12 years, and one of the fascinating things that I learned is that every agency of the government hires scientists. And for me, there was an aha moment. So I think that it should be both ways, but we should have hybrid profiles with this like dual background of science and policy to be able to connect both worlds and to be able to translate things from one world to the other one and reverse.
During the last years, there is a term that it is a fashion term. It is sustainable intensification. And when you hear some concept in some debate in the mouth of producers, you can understand that they want, it is rational, they can produce the same with less input, and that's okay. But you as expert on ecology, do you think that it is an oxymoron? I mean, it is really possible to intensificate in a sustainable way or not? Or this is not real sense of in scientific knowledge.
I cannot answer this question as an ecology expert. I'm going to answer this question as an activist. No, it's impossible. We need to change the way that we consume, and we need to like redefine our priorities. So I think that up to a certain way, yes, we need to change the way that we're producing, to do it in a more sustainable way, because that's for sure. But at the same time, we cannot continue fooling ourselves by saying that this can go in crescendo forever in a more sustainable way. But that's the oxymoron that you were saying.
It's an oxymoron for you. Clearly.
It is.
So you should eliminate a lot of the last literature that it is using everywhere or every crop. We are intensifying, but in a sustainable way. And one last question before opening the discussion, and maybe Pau wants to react to some of your opinion. If you could, the same question that for Pau, if you could define the priorities for Mediterranean ecosystems in order to prevent their capacities to produce at the same time outputs and services, what is for you the order of priorities and how to act in terms for water, for instance, and soil? What is your recipe or your policy? In a country like Spain and other Mediterranean countries where the situation is almost critical at that moment.
The main priority is collaboration. Collaboration, a multi-stakeholder approach to collaboration, and including communities. Because we cannot forget that communities have a very important knowledge that in most cases is key for implementation. So without them, implementation is very hard, if not impossible. So collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. North, south, like south, north, east, west, absolutely everything. Because I think that in the Mediterranean, the interesting thing is that what the climate is in the south of the Mediterranean now, it will be in the north in the future, in this scenario of climate change. So we really need to collaborate.
Well, thank you very much, Alicia. We have about 14 minutes, okay, to open a debate, dialogue with questions of the audience and between you two. Maybe, Pau, maybe you have the first option before the rest of the audience can. Do you want to ask us?
Just to complement a little bit, it's true that we have the need of collaboration, but implementation goes together with money, and we have a finance gap, enormous finance gap between what the market provides and what the science and the sector demands. There is a big gap, and this is maybe in certain groups of countries there is might be a solution, because common agriculture policy for European Union can be readapted to climate change. But on many other places and many other countries, there is no an alternative, and only the market cannot provide at this stage. The market, I'm saying the financial market, it's not sensible. If you go around the area, if you go around here in those pavilions, there are very little bank. There's public banks, but there is not a private market funding. So this is very important. There is something not going on well in this moment. But why? Because the parameters are only growth, and sustainability has not been measured. So unless we change some parameters in the way we measure economy and the way we measure performance, the market will not react. So this is, I think it's something to say on top of it. And then, of course, you're right on the soils. The soils is the capturing the most. We participate in this 4 per 1,000 initiative, which I think is marvelous. And I think we will have to all go this way, not only for preventing desertification, but also for increasing carbonation of soils. Very important. This is the life of vines.
Thank you, Bob. We need more money to adapt. Adaptation is expensive, a lot of expensive, because to plant a vineyard is not cheap. Anyway, it's open for the audience the possibility to ask to Pau or to Alicia. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. You know that, well, if you were this morning, I'm representing the ENI CBC MED program. So very much Mediterranean, and Siam is part of our program. And of course, I'm worried listening to this, because now there seems to be a way to make wine in London. And also you say that maybe in the south, wine could be under threat. So we have always considered the Mediterranean as the best place or best type of climatology to make wine. So is this really under serious threat? Is there a way to avoid this in the next 10 years? Or will we see yes, the wine go in somewhere else? It's very important for our program because we finance projects on this type. And what could the projects of our future program do to avoid this as much as possible? That would be the question. Difficult one.
To be able to avoid not all of this, but a part of this, we need to stay under 1.5 Celsius. And to be able to do that, we need to work in mitigation right now, and we need to reduce the number of emissions drastically and now, basically. Because if we think about the carbon budget, right, like we need to think about like a bathtub. Imagine a bathtub that has been filling up since the industrial era, and now the bathtub is like 3 fingers to just like all the water to get out. So and that's the CO2 that the atmosphere can absorb in the next 10 years before like trespassing the 1.5. So to be able to stay in the scenario that you were describing, we need to stay under 1.5, and to do that, we need to decrease the emissions of CO2 dramatically. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. I think that it was like 60% improbable, right? I think that the numbers were something like that, but it's not impossible.
There are more questions? I have a more question for you. Do you want to
Just to
to
respond
ask?
to Vincent, I think it's if we stay within these margins, and I insist on what I said, delocalization is not an option, and because we have other variables to work with, and I trust a lot on the capacity of the vines, the capacity of the plant material, the diversity of the rootstocks, of the varieties themselves. And I always say that this is a species, Vitis vinifera, that is very anthropomorphic or anthropocentric or anthropo-driven, because it's like the dogs, you know, that they are so they are so diverse, or the horses, and Vitis vinifera is like the dog. I mean, it's something that has been adapted to man, and man knows how to drive these species together with his necessities, and so we are in a very anthropocentric type of ecosystem, no? So I think, and I trust that if we stay in this ranking of temperatures, we are not going to delocalize vineyards. So, for sure, and also for the security and the tranquility or the of the investors, because it's very important that all this heritage is not being eroded. Okay.
Let me, if there is not any question, to ask last. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Well, I would say a kind of technical question as well as a consumption question, because what I observe is that the degree of alcohol in the wine is increasing. I'm living in the area of Montpellier, and now on the field, before it is harvested, the grapes are already about 17 degrees alcohol, and I feel that we notice that the wine that are commercialized now in the area are very are more than 13, even 14 degrees. And I have two questions. How do we have to deal with that in a technical way, without modifying too much the vinification process? If we want to have still wine with an acceptable degree of alcohol for the ordinary consumption, even for the classification of wine, because wine cannot be up. I don't know. I don't remember the exact degree of alcohol, but there is a problem. That is a problem of management of the vinification due to the high level of alcohol now due to the climate change.
Okay, I couldn't understand perfectly because there is a lot of noise here. There is a lot of people that see us online don't see what's going on in this area. But I have to tell you that the equilibrium is very important between pH, as you know, the acidity, total acidity, and also the degree of alcohol. So it is true, we have a quality problem when we go up with high temperatures and high concentration of sugar. So the solution for that is changing the way you conduct vineyard, the way you plant, and what type of variety you use for that specific site. We have to play with these elements. And I don't think I have a response. When you have problems with quality, you have to solve the problem in the vineyard and not in the cellar. That's the thing.
My last question would be for the two. We hear very often the concept of smart agriculture, smart viticulture, and so on. But in my vision, smart agriculture or viticulture involves big farms, big vineyards, a big size. In my vision, my knowledge, it is very difficult for the small producers, medium producers to adopt these technologies that we call smart technologies. If we consider that in the old wine world, in France, in Italy, in Spain, most of the vineyards are small and medium vineyards. If we compare with the new world wine, where it is characterized by bigger and different model of production, much more technificated, how can we adopt this model of smart viticulture in our countries where diversity, almost minifundism, it is small holdings, is a value? And maybe the opinion of Alicia could be also interesting. When you hear small agriculture, what do you think about in terms of contradiction?
Well, it is intrinsic to the sector to be small. I mean, it's a fragmented sector. When we try to make concentration, we tend to banalize the product. So this is, and at the same time, I'm going back to the words collaboration. in the vineyards or in the areas of production has always existed through institutional systems being called interprofession, being called consortii, being called consejos reguladores, whatever you have. This is the systems of collaboration have to be improved, enhanced, and promoted. And this is the only way that small wineries or small producers can resolve their problems in cooperation. And I'm not saying only the cooperatives. This is another way of integrating, but also, but mainly this that some systems think that they are anti-competition, but they are not. They are pre-competition, and I think they have to be promoted because in other ways they won't get this necessary technology and this mainly necessary information, because decisions need to be individual, but you need a lot of information to be very precise on the treatments, on the way, on the decisions that you take every day.
I was going to complement that by saying that sometimes changes are easier to implement in small companies than in big companies. So, and sometimes these small companies or small wineries or small producers are more willing to do what it takes just because for them is their only way of living, and it has been in the family forever, so they are basically, you're playing with their lives. And in a big company maybe it's a different feeling, so they are really willing to do what it takes for their business to survive. And I think that this is important to take into consideration. So when I think about collaboration with the science, I also think about collaboration with the social sciences, that social sciences are also part of science.
Thank you very much, Alicia. Thank you very much, Pau. Our time is over. I hope this dialogue has been interesting for you, for the audience. We should finish this debate with a degustation. Why degustation with different kind of wines? It's impossible for different reasons, but you can imagine. But maybe if we repeat in another cup, Pau, I hope we can show how water is changing wines, and if it's a real or not opportunity to continue improving. I am optimistic too. So thank you very much for your attention. See you.